Rising Sun!
The Legend of Heroes Trails into Reverie is, for all intents and purposes, a game meant for fans who have followed these characters across 3 sagas and 9 total games. It's not exactly beginner-friendly by any means, and that's putting it mildly. Still, that identity, crafted by a rich history, is Reverie's greatest strength. Before we get into the video, we'd like to thank our Patreon supporters for making this possible. Please take a second to check out patreon.com/noisypixel to support independent game journalism.
But there's some nice junk in that trunk.
With Trails into Reverie finally getting a Western release, there are plenty of familiar systems that can be found from a gameplay standpoint, though there are still new elements to take note of. For one, Reverie will perhaps ironically be the first time all of Crossbell's cast will be voiced in English. After all, the Crossbell duology, which includes Trails from Zero and Trails to Azure, is entirely in Japanese. And while a few of the characters appeared in the Trails of Cold Steel saga, it was only a fraction of the cast. Now, with the likes of Wazi, voiced by Griffin Burns, Noelle, voiced by Abby Trott, Arios, voiced by Yang Yi, and many other Crossbell residents receiving this treatment, we'll finally see this region in the same localized capacity as the rest of the series.
As much as I'd rather they answered for their crimes, them leaving Crossbell would make this operation at least a partial success.
That doesn't seem to be the case, weirdly enough. I didn't spot any aircraft within their vicinity through my binoculars.
This reunion, both new and old, is significantly bolstered by the true Reverie Corridor, a locale highly reminiscent of Phantasma from Trails in the Sky III. Also, just like in that release, which was partially a reunion game in its own right, Trails into Reverie utilizes this area to emphasize and highlight character backstories and relationships. As you explore this continually evolving dungeon, you'll stumble upon various resources, eventually enabling you to view lengthy character episodes from various points in the series' timeline. From events implied to have occurred off-screen to retrospective deep dives, fans who have kept up with the game since their collective inception will get the most out of them. Despite their optional nature, they are undeniably pivotal to watch as they will provide long sought-after closure before we eventually make our way to Calvard in the near future in whatever Kurono Kiseki's English name is. What makes Trails into Reverie more impressive, though, is how the character episodes aren't even the crux of the experience. There's an entirely original story here, uniting previous saga characters that continues and concludes several mini-arcs and conflicts. Of course, while I can't say too much, what I want to confirm, which is self-explanatory at this point, is that this narrative is really meant for those who have followed the Zemarian continent's developments over the past decade and then some. In fact, this is true to such an extent that players who have already gone through Reverie half-jokingly refer to it as a Crossbell 3 or Cold Steel 5 because the connectivity is just that constantly evident. So, if none of that made sense to you, you're probably not at the right place in the series to jump in here and should check out the other games first. The Legend of Heroes Trails into Reverie is a very particular game that easily has the potential to be your game of the year if your Trails history hits all the required boxes. If you've missed a game or two, I highly recommend going through them first. However, if you are fully caught up with the past 9 titles, then brace yourself for grown relationships and reunions that will be memorable for lifetimes. The Legend of Heroes Trails into Reverie is coming to PS4, PS5, Switch, and PC on July 7th, 2023. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth, and subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.